Arc Raiders just got some insane news and a ton of new details. I'm going to cover all those, like the ominous new enemies and the mysterious Stellamontis map. We'll also go over some data outside of the game that will tie directly back in. We'll check into how well Arc Raiders is doing on Steam, PlayStation, and even Xbox. With the Steam release, we can also check into some additional database details. We got a ton to talk about. What's up, World Utopia here, back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Arc Raiders. So first off here, I do want to go over the official news. We'll check into all those things there in the recent updates. We do have two official news details here, one which we'll briefly touch upon, and another one that we'll break down even further. This first one, if you haven't seen already, we do have some brand new map conditions. So we did a post here over on the Discord side of things, and that one is from the community manager, Embark Osen, where she does hit on here that they've been collecting field data, and they have been dropping some new map conditions that did happen over this last weekend. So now we do have the brand new electromagnetic storm that's happening on Dam Battlegrounds, Spaceport, and Blue Gate. So every map except Buried right now. Of course, Buried does have its own sand/desert storms, and given the map layout, it just doesn't really make sense for it. Additionally here, Spaceport did get a brand new hidden bunker event, much like the tower event on Spaceport, and now has an additional hidden bunker that can happen. And Blue Gate did get its new night raid. So really cool, they're just a week in and they've already added some new map conditions. And do remember, all of these will give 2 time points to your trials. So that does really help there on the leaderboard placements. That wasn't all though, of course, we got another additional official post here. This one just happened this morning, actually about an hour ago, where Embark Osen back again does mention that Arc Raiders did hit a total of 700,000 concurrent raiders. So that's not the total amount of sales, we'll get into that one in a second here. That is the total amount of players playing at one point in time. So essentially they did hit over 700,000 people playing the game at one point, which is just absolutely crazy. In fact, this number is so high, it actually does surpass Helldivers 2 and a few other games. So if we do look over on Steam, the top concurrent player count and the peak for it was 460,000, which actually does beat out Helldivers 2 peak. So the fact that it's actually surpassing a game like that is just absolutely crazy. It's also now beating many other games and their top 24-hour peak. So as you can see here, currently Arc Raiders is number 3, only being surpassed by Dota 2 and Counter-Strike 2, which if you know anything about those games is basically impossible to beat. So the fact that it is just underneath those is essentially a major achievement. Now really cool here, we actually do have some sales data. Now this isn't official by any means, but it is using Alenia Insight, which is a decently reputable organization when doing estimates. And they do have some estimate data here for Arc Raiders. Again, just to preface, these aren't official numbers, but they are estimates. Although, as I mentioned, the Alenia platform is pretty reputable for this. They do showcase here how well it has done on Steam, PlayStation, and Xbox, where they have estimated to sell over 2.5 million copies, which in the first week is absolutely insane, already achieving over 100 million plus in revenue. And for just on Steam, the estimated numbers are over 1 million daily active users. Really cool here, and actually kind of wild. For copies sold, the estimated is actually 69% on Steam, with 17% on PlayStation and 13% on Xbox platforms. So the PC platform actually makes up the majority of players. And I do think around Christmas time we'll even see more copies sold for the console platforms, as consoles usually do lag a little bit behind in sales. I've kind of noticed that with a lot of recent multiplayer releases, so I could see this number even spike higher. In fact, my prediction of a higher spike the second weekend was correct. The first weekend we saw around 350,000 peak concurrent player count, or over on Steam, this last weekend we saw 460,000. So we actually did see an uplift of over 100,000 players the second weekend. I've noticed that trend with nearly every single big release recently. That was essentially how I came across that prediction. Also, this number of revenue being over 100 million is super relevant. There was a recent interview with the Embark CEO, and in the interview they did mention that making these games actually cost a lot less than what you would think, and that they were doing it at the fraction of most AAA releases. So I think that does stand to already say that more than likely Arc Raiders is already profitable, and that's just in its first week of release. That doesn't account for any store purchases aside from the base game itself, which is just absolutely wild there. Next up here, I wanted to touch back up on the roadmap we saw recently, where they showcased Stellamontis map and the new enemies that are going to be arriving here. As I mentioned in a previous video, I did get my take on the Stellamontis map and how I do think that one is going to be unlocked, or that it's going to have to be unlocked. Touching back up on that again, this is pure speculation on my part. But I do have some sort of insider input here, as during the creator test they did give a creator debriefing, and they did tell us specifically that players would need to unlock the Stellamontis map. Now, you technically had to unlock the other maps by playing matches. So for example, Blue Gate was 18 matches in total. At this point, players have played so many matches, I don't think that's going to be how it's done. And right beneath it on the roadmap, it does say Community Unlock Event. I do think because they mentioned players that it might still be tied to this community event. Again, that is 100% pure speculation on my part. The only official detail that I know there directly from the devs is that players would need to unlock this map. We don't know for sure how, but I do think that this might be tied in some way, shape, or form. The other interesting one here is the new arcs, the Matriarch and the Shredder. Now, again, don't have any official details here, but I thought it might be a little bit interesting to speculate. So just to preface, they didn't give any dates when these would launch here, but they do say November. I do believe these will also probably be on the new map itself. But the one thing to note here is that Matriarch actually is fitting with Queen, Baron, Duke, and the King hierarchy. So it is touching up on the royal naming convention, and likely hitting on the command/leader role. So given that this actually is fitting with the Queen, I do think that this could be another massive boss type. Essentially, because of this, I don't believe it's going to be one of these smaller mobs like a Hornet or Wasp, and it might not even be like the bigger ones like Bastion or even Leaper. It might be like the huge one like the Queen, given the naming convention here. No idea for the Shredder one here, but of course the name does speak for itself. Suggests some sort of tearing and cutting mechanic, likely to be aggressive close quarter combat role. But just thought I would touch up on those since the naming scheme does kind of align with the Queen here. Last up here, I did say I wanted to touch up on the Steam database, so we had some changes there. The first one, of course, we did have a recent patch notes 1.1 that did fix a few exploits and issues. Notably, the major one was using deployables to push players through walls. I did hear that one mentioned in game, so that one has thankfully been fixed. Also, augment skills sometimes weren't working, and a few other known issues. Now, there was one other database change here, and that was actually to the achievements, which happened yesterday. Some of the achievements have been renamed, or their description has been changed. So if you've noticed any different there in the naming scheme, or just noticing that you have different achievements unlocked, more than likely the name was changed or the description of the actual achievement was changed. There was actually quite a few of them here, but that actually did happen last night. In fact, just around 6 hours ago my time. So if you did notice anything there different, that is why. Overall though, it should about cover for today's video. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, and until the next one, deuces.